Call the Board of Supervisors meeting to order. We'll be going into closed session.
All right, whereas the Board of Supervisors of Orange County desires to discuss in closed meeting the following matters: discussion, consideration, interviews of prospective candidates for employment, assignment, appointment, promotion, performance, demotion, salaries, disciplining, or resignation of specific officers, appointees, or employees of the public body, respective county administration, planning, economic development, county administrator, interim county administrator. Consultation with legal counsel pertaining to actual probable litigation, which is consultation of open meeting would adversely affect negotiating or litigating posture of the public body concerning S power and airport easements. And whereas pursuant to sections 2.23711A1 and A7 of the Code of Virginia, such discussions may occur in closed meeting. Now therefore be resolved by the Supervisors of Orange County as hereby authorized discussion for state manager closed meeting. Need that as a motion.
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We're just gonna go back here.
Upstairs.
No, upstairs. We've got
Why are we going into closed session?
everything.
Members of the board, to the best of your knowledge, were the only matters discussed in the closed meeting, public business matters lawfully exempted from open meeting requirements, and that only such public business matters as were identified in the motion by which the closed meeting was convened were heard, discussed, or considered in the closed meeting. Mr. Frame,
Aye.
Mr. Johnson,
Aye.
Mr. Crozier,
Aye.
Mr. White,
Aye,
and Mr. Goodwin.
he's here.
He will be in here shortly.
Confirm his vote with him.
When he
Okay.
comes in. Okay.
Get his vote and he, come back into the room.
All right. At this time, we're back in open, and I would like to call our work session to order. Ms. Simpson, the Smart Scale Project Concept.
Yes, very briefly, we had a VDOT team here in December, led by a presentation from Chuck Proctor, regarding development of the Smart Scale, project concepts for the upcoming funding cycle. We're approaching the pre-application deadline of April 3rd, and, the pre-application stage is the time in which VDOT staff will look at the applications and determine which projects can advance to the full application. So Chuck is here and has an updated presentation this evening that will contain specific project information, and he'll talk about next steps in the application process. So I'll turn it over to Chuck.
Good afternoon, guys. While you're coming up, Allison, could you confirm with Mr.
Yes, Mr. Goodwin, we're certifying closed. Yes, sir.
Aye.
Perfect.
All right, basically, it's just expanded on the projects that we talked about last time. We had the Route 20 and 522, the High Street 231 in the town of Gordonsville, and then we had a discussion about 3 and 20, but I wanted to bring it back and have continued discussion with that project. So I'll just start with the first project. This is 20 and 522. It's been submitted 3 times now. I think this will be the 3rd time, but we still have a significant number of crashes. It's ranked number 8 in the district from a crash perspective. Basically, you've got 12 injury crashes that are occurred in the last 5 years at this location. Primarily, it's the angle crash, which is what you see at signalized intersections that have a lot of turning movements. So this is just a breakdown, a summary of the crashes at the intersection. We have 37 total crashes, and the ones listed at the top are just the injury crashes. Next slide is, this is, VJust is a high-level analysis tool we use. We can screen a bunch of different types of alternatives, but for this one I only looked at the conventional intersection of what's out there now and the roundabout. They both do really well. As you can see, the total number of conflict points for a roundabout is significantly less than a full intersection, 48 versus 8. The right-of-way impacts are going to be high for this one because basically you've got a conventional intersection there, and we're going to be having to buy some right-of-way to actually build the project. The next column is the crash modification factor. Now, this is, right now it's 1, so you've got 37 crashes. We would expect to see 37 crashes in the next 5 years. For a roundabout, you'd only get 22% of those crashes, so you could reduce that number significantly by putting a roundabout there, and that's why we're picking it as the preferred alternative. And the
You
cost,
actually reduce the number of crashes
It
with the
would-
roundabout?
it will reduce the number of crashes by somewhere around 78 to 80%. And it would reduce the number of injury crashes
I
by
could believe the
over
injury
90%.
crashes, but it seems to me like you'd end up with more fender benders.
And that's what it does. It primarily, basically, you're slowing down at the approaches instead of flying through there at whatever the speed limit of the road is. If somebody pulls out, you're gonna hit them at high speeds and cause severe injury. Well, the roundabout, all the approaches have to slow down
Okay.
to 25 miles an
Yeah,
hour, circulate through the roundabout, like
Okay.
Gordonsville.
Okay.
So, but what it does is, those, if we go back to this other slide, let's see. It will reduce, these angle crashes, you won't have angle crashes. You won't have head-ons. You'll have more side swipes and possibly rear ends. And those are low severity crashes.
Yeah,
So you may have more of those, but not significantly more.
yeah, okay, all right. If you don't count those as crashes, that's fine.
No, those still count as crashes, but they're less,
Okay,
there's not as many and they're less severe.
all right.
That's what it does.
Are you gonna comment any further on the right-of-way situation here? If not, I have a question about that, I just want,
When we get to the slide, I can talk about the right of way.
okay.
Here's the slide. This is the revised sketch from last round. I think what we did is, and this is one of the things I wanted to talk about. I think it's Village Road is the road that comes from the side here. We had it tying in as a right out, so you could actually enter. We cul-de-saced it this time and ran just a multi-use trail to the roundabout and then cross over to the gas station. But other than that, and we removed the sidewalk that went from the roundabout over to the park area, the county, property the county owns on the southeast portion of the, sketch. But other than that, everything is pretty much the same as it was last round.
Are you still able to exit Village Road, or is that going to be cul-de-sac completely?
At this end, it was gonna be cul-de-sac completely, and that's one of the things we wanted to talk about.
Yeah,
To
because.
see if you guys, because there's two other connections out, one goes out to 20 and one goes out to Route 522, that it's not that much, it's quicker to go this way, but not that much quicker.
But if you've ever had a vehicle with a trailer coming out onto Route 20 farther
Okay.
south is
Difficult.
difficult, dangerous,
Okay,
and
Yeah, you're
harder
pulling
to
out
do.
speed limit there's 55,
Yes.
65, 75.
It's an
Okay.
uphill.
well, I mean, this is one of the things, we were looking at this as a way to reduce the cost a little bit.
Okay.
And it would still provide conductivity, and you could still get out by having this connection here. And we felt that you had two other access points that you could come out to that we felt were adequate, and that we still felt the connection for bikes and pedestrians to this location might be beneficial if they wanted to go to the convenience store to get a soda or something like that.
Well, there was an attempt, I wanna say 2 years ago, to make Village Road a right turn only
Well,
onto
the last round,
522 going
yes.
Yeah.
south. And that lasted a week,
At the
maybe,
most.
Oh, yeah.
and there was an uprising.
Well, I mean, we've had 4 different scenarios for this particular location. This is just this attempt. This is something that we need to flesh out, but I mean,
But is it a right-of-way issue? I'm trying to, what's the
all
drive?
that green is right away. Part of it was, to make some of the connections, we were having to go back on, further back where the properties are. All this green area is existing right away here.
Is there a,
But there was some area further to the, I can't show it here, back.
It's showing on this television
on
here.
On the last one, the last sketch, we actually had to get right away from these properties here. Because we had to come back to here to actually make improvements on the road for the transition area when we were bringing it in as a right in here. But we can go back to that option, we thought this might be, a way to reduce the cost somewhat, but if you wanna go, the other option is fine.
The other option would be to bring Village Road into 20 west of the circle.
What it was basically, it curved in before, I could pull it up. Yeah. It basically brought it in here as a right out hole,
Right.
is what
Yeah.
it just curved in
Yeah,
to Route 20.
I think that makes a lot more sense than
Okay,
that.
I mean, that's
I
fine.
mean,
If you wanna go back to that one, we can do that, that's not a problem. So, and that was one of the things I was in talking with my folks from L&D who came up, made these changes. We wanted to get qualifications on that, to make sure you guys were supportive of what we wanted to move forward with.
And I think that's an important change because obviously don't have any statistics, but the flow of traffic I live not very far from here, so
Okay.
I see this quite frequently. And the flow of traffic is such that if someone wants to make a left turn on to 20,
Yeah.
they will go to one of the other
Intersections.
intersections.
Okay.
This is primarily a right turn to go either north on 522, which they could do with
Yeah.
this. They could even go south on 522
Yeah.
by looping around, but also could go north on.
I mean, with the
or east on
roundabout
20.
there, because of the size and the mobility, it allows you to go any direction very easily. If you wanted to go back towards the town, you could just come out, make the right and go around the roundabout and go right back towards town.
With the roundabout,
It'd
you
be
can do
really
that.
easy to get
Right.
out.
I think
and
that's-
easy to make that maneuver.
I think access from Village to the roundabout is a
Okay.
critical design.
Well, I'll go
feature.
back and we'll put the other concept in. I mean, we've still got that one, we can just go back to that version. And then, like I said, we eliminated the sidewalk and the crosswalks, I think were the only other things that we changed on this concept versus the previous concept. So, we'll just go back to the other concept for the connection, and we'll include the bike ped on this side, cause it makes sense to have this here and crossing, so you can go to the convenience store. Originally, we thought that access to the property on the other side, the park would be convenient, but it's not really used as a park right now, so we didn't feel that was
No.
necessary. So we'll add that connection back in and I'll finalize everything for that.
Is that the park next to, Dollar General? Is that what you're referring to?
It's where the,
Where the Rotary-
Rotary Club is.
The
Oh,
ballpark.
oh, okay.
It's
The
that,
Rotary Club, okay.
the county
Right,
owns
the
that
county
piece of
owns
property,
it.
but, I mean, there's a transfer station there and there's a couple of buildings, and I think the Rotan has their meetings there, so.
So, make sure I'm understanding, if you said the green color, or whatever, teal, whatever that is.
Well, not all of it is. Right there in that spot, it's actually the purple lines are the property boundaries on the map.
What I'm trying to get at is there a need for additional right-of-way? Can I see that on that, or are you okay with the right-of-way you have?
In this one, I think we needed to actually make the transition work from here, because there's a grade difference.
Right.
This road is a lot higher
Right.
than Route 20.
Right.
To get down to make this connection, we had to drop the grade. So to make that transition, we had to actually go back here and drop the grade, starting back here somewhere.
But for the roundabout itself, you do not need additional right-of-way, is that? You got the magic touch, whatever it is.
Good.
Oh, it just timed out. For the roundabout, there may be some slivers we need on a couple of the corners. I'm not sure
Okay.
exactly.
But not a substantial,
No.
Okay.
Like I said, the biggest issue was, I know back here, over here, the right-of-way line comes across here and here, and this is all VDOT right-of-way, but this area right in here is not.
okay.
I think there's a prescriptive easement back here, but to make this work, we had to get some right-of-way back here. And this is I think there's a cemetery back here, so this is, it's not gonna be impacted by the project, but it's on the property that will be impacted by the project. But that's all we had for this one. Any more questions? Like I said, what I'm gonna do is take your comments back, and we'll put the other concept, we'll make the changes to the concept, and then we'll send it back out to Allison so she can upload the pre-application. Then once we finalize everything, we'll come back to you with the final package of information for the full application, but that's not due till August. So you will have one or two opportunities additionally to review the concepts, the cost estimate, and the details of the study. All right. Next one is High Street in the town. Like I said, we're still having crashes there. This is also part of their Safe Routes to School project, this intersection, so it has multiple benefits. Not as many crashes as we had at 20 and 522, but still significant. And it's still ranked 91 in the top 100. Like I said, the VJUST analysis, again, similar to what it was for the other one, the cost is in the same ballpark. You do get more of an adjustment here, because this is an unsignalized location versus a signalized, so you get more of a benefit from the, putting the roundabout in, because right now it's a two-way stop controlled intersection. And the cost is comparable to what we saw for the one at 522 and 20. This is the concept, basically the same as last round. I don't think we've changed anything. And any questions about that one?
So that was in last time.
Yes.
And didn't score high enough. Has the scoring changed?
It hasn't changed any. It's just every time round, you have a different group of projects that are submitted. So you don't know if it's gonna be how well it's gonna do or how poorly. This round, we have no major projects in the state. There's no like Hampton Bridge Tunnel or I-66 outside the Beltway. We don't have any of those big type projects that are going to overpower the scoring and the money. So there's more opportunity this round than it was previous round for.
And did you say the score on this one was relatively close to the 522?
This one didn't score quite as well as 522 from a safety standpoint. This one had a little bit more economic development. That's one of the components. There's two real pieces that we get funded, that we get score points from. In orange, you get points from for your economic development, and that's like 35% of your score. And then safety is, I think, 30% of your score. So those make up the major bulk of the points that you get for an application. So this one, the PSI is not as high, but they have a little, because it's in the middle of Gordonsville, they have more opportunity for economic development than you do out at 20 and 522, so. All right, and then the last one is 20 and Route 3.
Oh, boy.
A lot of dots on this one, and that red dot is a fatality. So
When was that data updated?
this was updated recently,
Recently
as in,
This
we
afternoon.
pulled through 2019, so it's got the
Okay,
2019.
so it's not recently then.
Well, it's got all the data
It's
up
relatively,
through December,
okay.
yes,
If you'd like to see how much it's not updated,
okay.
go sit at the intersection.
Oh, no, I know. It
Okay,
changed.
so that's why I say, if you look at the crash data, about 2:30 today,
Yeah.
there was another accident there.
Yeah. I mean,
It's a regular.
we had, in the last year, it gone up significantly over the previous years, so it's trending up, so that's why I brought it in here, and we brought the we didn't get, like I said, it's not through today, but it's through December, which for us, that's the most current data we have. And actually, that's the data they're gonna score the applications by, so, but like I said, this is with 44 crashes within that footprint of the intersection, 300-foot buffer. We have 13 angle crashes, which are your left turn hit with the oncoming traffic, and 23 injuries out of those 13. The other ones are rear.
Curiosity, when was that intersection improvement completed?
September? Yeah.
Okay.
So, I mean, we looked at the whole year, we didn't look just at the,
Well, no, I know,
Areas since
it was,
then, so.
it's just that
yeah.
it has gotten substantially worse. I know Mr. Frame gets some phone calls about it, but for
But,
some reason, I get real lucky and get a lot of phone calls
yeah.
about
But
it.
one of the things is that I think you should be looking at the data, I mean, even if you need to annualize it, since the
Change.
changes,
Right.
as opposed to using
Yeah.
the previous data.
We have it by year, and we can get it, it
But I'm
all comes
saying-
with a
I'm saying
date, so
it-
we can correlate
It's not a
it.
full year,
Yeah,
but you can look at it from the standpoint of, this is the annual rate,
yes.
and look at it from since the corrections have been done.
Yeah, we have the data, like I said, it's all dated, so we can correlate it a
Okay.
bunch of different ways, and if you wanna I can bring you that data, if you wanna see
So
that
you can just send
data
it
too.
to us.
Okay.
Send it to Allison.
The VJust tool, the green T is what we looked at before. Roundabout is just one of the standard ones we look at, but for a 4-lane road, it's not a recommended solution because of the conflict points with the, people weaving in and out of the lanes in the roundabout, so. And it also doesn't function very well in the out years, so, but those are the two. The green T was one of the ones, was the preferred, alternative from the study, GWAP study, so, that we did, so that's what we looked at that one. And this is the concept that they had in the GWAP study that shows the green T and how it would work.
Something that we're looking at doing is, not for this round, but working on, basically from this point forward to, and I've talked to Bethel about it some, moving the going for smart
Relocated to
scale,
the.
relocate it
Yes.
and focus our energies there.
Yeah.
Because.
And the funding.
No,
Yeah,
and
and funding,
I
right.
understand, it's just, this funding is gonna be 6 years out.
Right.
So if you wait 2 more years for that funding, and that's if you get it selected for funding,
Right.
that would be another 2 years after that.
Right.
So, and then you'd still have to do something at this intersection, it's not gonna go away. It just won't be
No,
as much volume, and you still have access to the, wilderness battlefield. So, this might be a solution that we could implement in addition to those. It's not necessarily would retract, it's not gonna hurt your efforts for that intersection.
Okay, that's,
Well, but there is a concern that, I think I can safely say the majority of the easement that would be needed to move the intersection
Yes.
is entirely in private hands at the
Yes.
moment. That could change tomorrow.
Yes.
Or the next week. And so waiting the 6 years plus the 2 that, you know,
Well,
I'm concerned about that option getting completely,
And
wiped out, yeah, because.
I don't know, if we look at that as an alternative, the cost would be probably not make it fundable. I mean, we submitted projects in Albemarle County, right in the middle of Albemarle County, that were $100 million projects, and they just, the most expensive project we've gotten funded in this district is $26 million, and that was for the interchange at Lord Fairfax Community College on 29. The second one is the Divergent Diamond interchange at 124, 250, 64, right in Charlottesville. Once you go below that, it goes down to like $10, $12 million. I can't buy the right of way for $10, $12 million
but that's,
for the project you're talking about.
Well, but what if the right of way
That donated.
were
Yeah,
dedicated?
I mean,
But it would, I mean,
Yeah.
it would be conditioned upon a project
yeah.
going
I
forward,
don't
of
know.
course.
I mean, yeah, I know what you're saying. The road project, it costs us several $1 million to build a mile of road. I don't know what the distance is. We'd have to calculate it out. I don't know from a competitive standpoint how well it would score, because I think the benefit wouldn't be enough to support.
But if
offset
you
the
could score it
cost.
with a dedicated right-of-way, how would that?
Yeah, I
Well,
guess that's the question that,
I don't
that,
know.
and with the economic development value, the safety,
Yeah,
and one thing we've been working on is getting Route 3 as a corridor of statewide significance for any number of reasons, but anyone that travels from Northern Virginia to Charlottesville or points southwest, if they're coming from I'll say the Springfield interchange,
yeah.
they're coming down Route 3 to Route 20.
Yeah,
Bottom line. So how the CTB cannot see that and score it favorably. And this is an issue we have at VACO when we're dealing with VDOT as well. There's no disagreement.
yeah,
There is no disagreement. So if there's no disagreement, why can we not work together to move forward in a sensible manner
yeah.
instead of piecemealing and then a decade down the road say, oh yeah, they talked about that a decade ago.
What would it take if we said, start building a plan for moving that intersection?
I mean,
With the assumption that we would get a dedicated right-of-way, and take that as a part of putting together a plan that could get scored, recognizing that it gets thrown out if there's no dedicated right-of-way. But with building that plan under those circumstances.
I mean, with the information that was done with the GWAP study, they looked at what the interchange would look like and the right-of-way and what the road would look like. I don't know if we have a cost estimate for it that's that close. We could look at it and try to come up with it
I think we should.
for that perspective.
I
And
think
then
we
we
should,
should
because
evaluate it at that point in time.
That, you know, I mean, if we wanna keep that corridor moving smoothly, and trying to just upgrade this particular intersection.
Well, I mean, we're gonna have these needed improvements at every intersection on the corridor eventually, so.
I understand.
Yeah. So, but I understand what you're saying, and we could further investigate that.
But I just,
Particular
you know,
scenario and see
understand,
what it would be.
it may be a lot of planning effort that may go by the way if we don't have but if we had a plan and could look at that and stick that's in, some period of time, we may be able to lock up the right of way. Right.
Yeah, I mean, because of the current funding strategy, you've gotta compete for funding across the state, and it's,
I understand.
in our district, we get like $20 million.
Right, and I
And
fully
it's-
understand that, and I can assure you, we would have regional support
Yeah,
for this to be funded through the regional commission and the other jurisdictions within the region. I almost hate to say this with some current conditions, but it certainly would benefit the Fredericksburg VDOT to have these improvements made in the Louisa VDOT area, because they could shove more traffic down Route 3 than
once they
currently
get out of
can.
Fredericksburg.
Well, and you see, that's another thing that we're fighting, and, it might make a difference long-term.
Yeah,
They wanna shove a bypass down. our
if they, yeah, I know, I've seen that plan too, so.
throat, You know.
I mean, and they've got issues that, cause they grew like Charlottesville did, they followed Route 3 and didn't really plan for a network that
Right.
allowed the traffic
Which,
to flow around.
which is what we are doing.
So,
So this is what makes it more difficult. Our entire plan down here has been to put in a network of roads
yeah,
to siphon off whatever we can off of Route 3.
Mm-hmm.
And I really believe that with the people that sit on the CTV, if it could get past the bureaucratic level to them, I believe it is something that they would look favorably on.
I don't know.
Okay.
I know what you're saying. I'm just looking at it from, when I look at the data and what projects they select, they're not dropping down the list and picking projects that might be down here. They're picking,
Oh,
they're
no,
staying with the
they-
projects that
They
are.
picked one in this county that, plain and simple,
601.
yes.
It scored well, and it was low cost. Now, L&D's messed up the estimate, but that's a separate issue,
So-
and we're getting that worked out, but
I
it's
guess
not-
what I'm
yeah.
saying is we have a long-range, well-developed plan
Yeah.
that has been supported buy a transportation study through VDOT.
I,
It would just really, really be nice.
we can look at it further, and I can get with L&D. I can't do it for
And I
this
know
round,
this is
but-
great for this round,
Okay.
but, yeah, it's
I mean,
something
this
we
is
really-
still something that has a benefit over
What it currently
waiting,
is.
over waiting, and you would probably need to do something here anyway, and this would be probably what you'd end up trying to do here. Either this or an R-cut, and I'm thinking this might be better for the entrance to the battle.
So, did you present 3 projects?
Yes,
Is that what we're limited to this time around?
well, that's all that we looked at before. When I came to you before, was asking for projects, and, I gave you recommendations of 2, and then you added this one, so I didn't have any other ones that
Well,
was.
on the last go-round, we ran both intersections at Barbersville.
Yes.
through. One of them was
Yes.
advanced. So why?
No, neither one of them were, one of them was advanced. It just didn't score very well from it. There weren't as many crashes at that location, as there were previously. So
So you didn't go back and look at it again this time?
we didn't recommend it this time if it showed up on the crash list, we would have recommended it. It's still eligible as a UDA project. If you wanted to submit it as a UDA project, we can pull it out and look at it again, but we didn't at that time. And I didn't realize you guys wanted us to look at it again. This one still shows up as a safety need at 231 and High Street. That's why we looked at it.
When we're looking at scoring, how much does the current situation weigh relative when we're looking at downstream at a future situation?
We only look at, we do a traffic study, we'll look at how it would operate in the future. And that's what we'll do for all these projects. And actually, let's see,
Well, I'm saying you can look at crash data and traffic slowdown and stuff like that currently. But if you're looking for, hey, we've got some economic development going on,
we look at.
and that's,
We forecast the traffic up for the study, and we'll do the analysis based on 2040 traffic volumes. And that's what we use to, we didn't have that information here, but on some of my, I've already got it done. I just haven't done it. When we do the study, finalize the study, it will have future volumes and future analysis in it. So, I mean, we'll take into, I know that Wilderness is currently working on their study right now, and, I mean, we're waiting to see it, and then
We're meeting on Thursday.
so, yeah.
I'm a little confused about I'm gonna go back to the roundabouts in Barbersville. The one roundabout advanced, correct? The one, the eastern,
Yeah, the one at, 522, or 231 and High Street.
no, I'm not talking about Gordonsville, I'm talking about Barbersville.
20 and
Oh.
33.
Oh, on
20 and 33.
We never looked at the other one. The first one on the east side came in because it was identified as a safety need. The other one wasn't.
Okay, last time they both went through and were scored. They were both scored last time.
We only scored one location.
No, we scored both of them, because we had a score for both.
Scored both of them, and one did not score high enough to be considered. The other did score high enough to be considered, but was not selected.
I didn't think we did. Maybe we did. I don't have to go back.
Well,
I know what
I
you're
don't want those intersections, and I'm a little confused on what's been done, but those 2 intersections, I don't want them to fall off the radar screen. We need to keep looking at them, because they continue to be an issue.
Well, like I said, we look at the top 100 crash locations every cycle. And the top 100, if it's in the top, actually, we looked at the top 50 this time. Instead of the top 100, because the ones that were above 50, none of them, we have not been able to get one funded. So we focused on the ones that were below 50. We look at that every cycle, and we will bring all that information out to you all to look at when we identify the projects. And that's what we did this round. It just didn't show up on that list. It's not that it wasn't forgotten, it just wasn't high enough crashes to show up on on that list of projects.
Well, both of those intersections need some help. And so it's really, I don't wanna belay this for 20 minutes. I'll do some checking into it.
I mean, I
We'll
can
talk
look,
about it another
I've got the
time.
data on, I can look at it and provide you with what it scores from a safety standpoint, how it ranked in the district. I mean, it still is a
Seems to
project
me that the lesser one ranked like 86 last time, and that the other one was ranked
I'd have
considerably higher
to,
than
I'd have
that.
to look and see, cause I have it on I can look at it pretty quickly.
But yeah, I agree with Mr. Johnson, we do need to keep those
Yeah.
on the radar because they're bad intersections too, just not as high a volume.
Well, yeah, like I said, if they stay on the list, we're gonna keep plugging away at them till we can get some solution that's gonna solve those issues there.
One last question, back on the 3 and 20 one, if you pull that back up. What was your cost on the T?
This is a
Pre-
green tea.
Yeah, previous slide, I think had it on there,
The cost.
the cost estimate.
Yeah, he's got it at 3.4 million. There's not a lot of right of way, cause you've got all of it out there for the most part.
Yeah.
Wasn't a lot of cost.
My point was that, I don't know what the project that was completed in September cost, but
It was,
call it $1 million just to pick a
Yeah.
nice round number. And here's another 3.5 or thereabouts. I mean, at what point in the evaluation process can the recognition be included that we're spending money anyway?
Yeah.
To not solve the problem, why don't we spend the money we need to solve the problem? I mean, it seems to me at some point that conversation, at a minimum, needs to be had.
Yeah, this was funded with HSIP funding, what's out there now. This is funded with Smart Scale, that's a different pot of money.
Let me guess where they all came from, though.
Once you get projects, once you get a project like for Smart Scale, I can't go back and look at it for a couple years after the project's built. So I have to wait a period of time before I can go relook at it again, even if it shows up as another continuing problem.
Well, that just adds to my point,
Well,
that if you do something and it's still bad or worse,
well,
then,
like I said, we're doing what we can based on the data to try to make it better. And cause we're limited as to what we can do on a large scale to fix problems, because we just can't compete with the larger
sure. Oh, no,
areas in the
it's,
state, cause we may have 30
We need more
accidents.
accidents if
They
we
may
have
have
enough
70 or
funding.
80 accidents, and that's what we're competing against.
Should we take some old cars out there?
I was going to say, have a demolition derby, we can bump it up.
So, not that I wanna have more crashes, but we wanna try to do what we can do to
Yep.
minimize them as quickly as we can.
Well, very good, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Anything further?
So, do you want me to move forward with the Route 3 project or wait?
Yes, at this
Okay.
point, we need to keep moving forward,
Okay.
and maybe for once, we might be able to convince some people to
All right.
apply some money in a more intelligent manner.
I mean, we can,
But when
between
you-
now and then, we can look at do some more investigation on that other project to see
Okay.
what the costs are,
And we will,
define it a little better and get a
unless
better
something
cost.
changes, we will definitely be looking at that for
Okay.
a smart scale project,
Okay,
the next round.
okay.
Well, and the idea is, if we have some idea of what the other possibility is there, do we necessarily wanna spend the 3.4 million on the existing, if it can be applied to the other?
Well, currently it can't, but that's something we're
can't-
gonna look and see
You
if we
couldn't
can
take
do.
this project money and move it to another project.
So,
It's not, they
Somewhere
don't let us do that anymore.
thank you very much.
Thank you, all right.
All right, at this time, we will conclude the work session, move back into our regular meeting, and if everybody would please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. We have one change to the agenda, and that is to strike 13A from the calendar. Any other changes to the agenda? I would entertain a motion.
Move as approved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, very good. All right, special presentations and appearances, service awards.
Yes, sir. You have we have 4 service awards actually, one of whom is in attendance. Gail Lloyd is being recognized for 20 years service as a child care director.
Yes.
After 20 years doing that, you need congratulations. Certificate of appreciation to Gail Lloyd for 20 years outstanding service. And we're going to turn around and hold like this, and we're not going to shake hands, because we're trying to observe all of the new regulations and everything. So congratulations.
Thank you.
Very good. Yes,
Appreciate
it did, and it takes a lot of dedication to do that.
Sir,
Thank
thank
you
you
very
very
much.
much.
And while the chair makes his way back to his seat, we have 3 other folks who would be receiving service awards who are not present tonight. Robert Kelly for 15 years as a part-time court security deputy, Michael Broyles for 5 years as an Orange County Sheriff's Office deputy patrol officer, and Bradford Darnell for 15 years also at the Sheriff's Office as a deputy, and he is a captain.
Very good. All right, the next item is introduction of Chris Cord, Emergency Communications Center Director. Mr. Cord. And that's why we're introducing you. Didn't know where you were at.
Yes, thank you for allowing me to be a part this evening. I just want to say I've been in 911. It's something I'm very passionate about for over 20 years. And Orange has a lot of projects going on. So it's taking a little time to get up to speed, but I'm confident I've been involved in similar projects and look forward to leading these to completion.
Very good. Welcome aboard.
Thank you.
Any questions for Mr. Cord?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, consent agenda.
Motion approved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Passes unanimously. All right, new business. Mrs. Bradley, authorization of budget and tax rate adds.
This item, I think, we're gonna consider after the public hearing on the tax rates, but if you want me to just describe it, I'll be glad to.
Yes, that would be good.
Because it's a reassessment year for Orange County, there are different advertising requirements involved in the budget process. So what we need to do tonight is, settle on, the tax rate to advertise, that's being considered as a result of the reassessment and the impact of that. So the wording is very specific in the state code. It's just boilerplate. And what we'll do is try to set a tax rate that would be a ceiling, so that as we continue to work through the budget, because there are still obviously a lot of unknowns, the state budget is not released yet, then we'll be able to come down from that maximum potential tax rate. But the ad also needs to reflect the fact that we may adopt the fire and EMS tax district, which is why we would do this after the public hearing.
Okay. Very good. Thank you, and we will see you again later.
And I have the next
Yep,
item
yep.
as well.
Proposed revision to personnel policy 4.7, compensatory time.
Right, and this one is really just an administrative change. The comp time policy was amended a year or two ago. However, with our biweekly payroll cycle, it would work a lot better with the automation if we designated a pay period as the beginning of our year, because we do, whatever balances that folks have typically at the end of March, we pay that out so that we're not carrying the liability on and on. So this would just move that instead of a March 1 date, which would typically fall somewhere in the middle of a payroll period. We would call it the first pay period, beginning in April to the following year, the last pay period beginning in March.
Very good.
Any sense of the impact if, on, you know, a typical individual, or would they be?
I don't really expect it to have any impact. It's really more just to smooth the administration of it in the system, because the system is designed to, when we put the date in the system, it will take care of paying those balances out in that particular payroll.
Right.
But because we had chosen a date that would fall in the middle of a pay period, it would require a lot of manual calculations to do that when it's supposed to, be a streamlined process.
So it just puts it on a rolling situation.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, very good, thank you.
Thank you.
All
Don't you
right.
need a,
Yeah,
need a
you want a
motion?
Do
motion?
you want a
Yeah.
motion on that? or-
Yes.
Yes,
Oh, okay.
So moved.
because it's a personnel policy.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Passes unanimously. All right, old business. Old business, okay. Department Director, Constitutional Officer reports. Nothing? Okay, County Attorney's report, I'm sorry. Okay, County Administrator's report.
I don't have anything at this time.
Okay. Board comment. Board contemplation. All right. We'll move right along then. Informational items, just the RSA minutes and the VDOT report. Appointments to boards, commissions, and committees. Does anyone have anything?
It appears that we need to reappoint the directors of the Broadband Authority,
Yes.
since we haven't had any for a couple of months.
Yes, it does, doesn't it?
We need
Accept
to
the motion
reappoint
for
the members
that.
of the Broadband Authority?
Well, that's what it says. When this popped up, I looked at it to make sure it didn't say 2020, but it says 2019.
Yes, the way the articles of incorporation are written, the directors of the Broadband Authority serve on 2-year terms that expire on the years when there is a Board of Supervisors election.
Okay, in that case, I would nominate, the past directors, to refill those positions.
Second that.
To fill, to the date of 2021?
Yes, sir, it would be through December 31st, 2021.
Okay, all right.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay,
Hey, we're all elected again.
good.
Yeah, boy,
All right. Move on to calendar items. Currently, I believe everything is good on there. We may have something in the future, but any questions or issues with any of those? Well, we have approximately 6 minutes to sit here and enjoy each other's company till public comment. Unless
Move we
there-
table that.
Is there anyone that is signed up we could go ahead and do? No? Okay. Anybody from the public that would like to speak? All right. In that case, we will just,
Sit here for 5 minutes.
sit here for 5 minutes. It's a shame that, I'll go back to board comment. It's a shame that, we can't sensibly get our taxpayer money spent by the state instead of wasting bits and pieces here and there. It'd be nice if we could get that worked out where the Transportation Board would see fit in situations like this to basically have a CIP fund for smart scale projects and fund from year to year until you got to the whole smart scale fund. And I will continue to address that both at the regional and the state level.
Mr. Chairman, if you've reopened the board comment, I'll make a comment on a process
See
point.
what you've done?
Yeah, you're gonna be sorry you did. As we saw when Clinton gave us the overview about the budget, I think it's important to point out that we find ourselves in a situation, largely because it's a reassessment year, having to address the subject of tax rates before we have a budget to spend the revenue from those tax rates. And so I just want to make note of that complicating feature. We're probably, maybe halfway or a little better in the budget process. There are a lot of moving targets still. I learned today that apparently the state is contemplating doing some additional tinkering with the school's budget as late as just a day or so ago. And so it is very much a moving target that we're having to sort of try to build some guardrails around and find a way to address it much earlier than we're really prepared to, and much earlier than we would do it in a normal year. So if it feels a little strange, it is a little strange, and but it is what it is. We're required to do this by state code, and so that will be the process that we're going to be addressing after the public hearing tonight. But it's
Virginia School Board Association had their meeting at the Orange County High School last week. And they gave a tour through the Orange County High School Center for Innovation. Wow. I mean, robotics is just a small piece of what they're doing. Some really, 90% of it went over my head. But there's some really smart kids in there doing some really interesting things.
oh yeah.
Including redesigning their own library, it's pretty impressive. If you get a chance to take the tours, and the kids are doing all the explanation,
Oh, yeah.
they're amazing. That is a really great place, and kids are getting certifications out of that, doing all the things they need to do.
Very good. Very good.
How we doing? Are we?
Okay, Teal, what do you got?
You got 2 minutes. Anybody?
Stock market went way up today,
Did it? Okay.
Definitely a good thing.
and we're 1,200 for the Dow, so
Fuel prices
we
are
get back a
down.
little of the money that gets stripped away, so.
Yeah, I told somebody earlier today, a friend of mine and I were chatting, and they made the comment that their 401k had become a 201k. So,
It's back to 301.
is it back to 301k?
It went up 1167 today, 4.89% it went up. Back over 25,000.
Okay.
Went down 7% yesterday, and was down, at the end of yesterday, it was down 20% from its high. So we've regained,
Well, it requires a little perspective. At least two of us sitting up here can remember when the Dow crossed 500.
I didn't
Probably
have
no
any
one
money
else
in
can
it
do
then.
that, but,
I didn't have any money in it then, but
yeah. And 2 years later, it crossed, or 3 years later, it crossed
Well, I
1,000.
have the best story on that Black Monday we had back in the, early 90s. As they're sitting there talking about it going down 300 points, which was a hell of a lot back then.
Well, percentage-wise, yeah,
I
huge.
called the administrator for the company I was working at, and I was like, where's our money? And she goes, you know, it's a rather funny story, that we're changing providers, and today it's sitting in a bank.
In cash, oh boy. What a lucky move.
No one lost a dime.
Wow.
All right.
Sometimes you get lucky.
I'll close board comment. It is
Oh,
5:30.
so soon?
Anyone signed up?
No,
since
sir,
then?
Mr. Chairman.
All right, I'll close public comment. Mr. County Attorney, sir.
I bet you did this. Whereas the Board of Supervisors of Orange County desires to discuss in closed meeting the following matters: discussion, consideration, interviews with respective candidates for employment, assignment, appointment, promotion, performance, demotion, salaries, discipline, and resignation of specific public officers, appointees and employees of the public body with respect to county administration, planning, economic development, and county administrator. Consultation with legal counsel pertaining to actual or probable litigation, or such a consultation open meeting with adverse effect of negotiating or litigation at the public body concerning airport easements. And whereas pursuant to sections 2.2, 37A1 and 87 of the Code of Virginia, such discussions may come to closed meeting. Now therefore be resolved that the Board of Supervisors of Orange County does hereby authorize discussion of four state matters in closed meeting. Read that into law.
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We're now in closed.
Here we go again. For several meetings?
I think he feels like that. Just take a tactic
All right.
to
Ready?
further.
Okay. Call the meeting back to order. Would you read us out of closed session? please?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. To the best of your knowledge, were the only matters discussed in the closed meeting, public business matters lawfully exempted from open meeting requirements, and that only such public business matters as were identified in the motion by which the closed meeting was convened were heard, discussed, or considered in the closed meeting. Mr. Johnson,
Aye.
Mr. Crozier,
Aye.
Mr. White,
Aye.
Mr. Goodwin,
Aye.
and Mr. Creighton.
Aye.
5-0.
Okay. At this point, we will be doing our public hearing for the creation of the Orange County Fire and EMS District. Start.
I can give a brief summary. I think maybe Glenda might be best to go into it in detail. Virginia code allows a governing body to create a layer of taxation, really, on real and personal property designated solely for the purpose of fire and EMS. And so all it really allows you to do is take your existing tax rate and split it into two pieces. One piece being designated only for fire and rescue, and one piece being designated for everything else. And so the public hearing that we're having tonight is to consider, and by the way, the public hearing is not required for what you're doing, but the board decided they wanted to hold a public hearing to give anyone who had something to say the opportunity to do so. After the public hearing, you will consider the resolution that would create a countywide fire and EMS tax district for that purpose. And Glenda may have more to elaborate on or more to add to that.
Just one thing, and that is that based on the budget, that we've been able to put together, which is still very much in draft form, the tax rate that it would take to fund that fire and EMS portion, which includes emergency management, is 11 cents out of the tax rate.
Okay, just real quick, do any of the board members have any questions for Glenda regarding this? Comments? Okay. All right, in that case, we'll go ahead and open the public hearing. Thank you, Glenda. Okay. Public hearing is open for creation of Orange County Fire and EMS District. We have anyone signed up to speak?
No, sir, not signed up.
Anybody in the audience desire to speak? Well, this is a first.
No, that's not.
Yeah, no, I have all these fire type people and they don't wanna speak. Public hearing is closed. I would, entertain the motion and discussion if,
Move to approve.
Second.
okay, further discussion.
I like this because it does provide more transparency to what our actual costs are and what the citizens can see what their tax money is going for. I do have a bit of a concern given that most individuals who support volunteer fire and rescue units know that there's some money coming into, from the taxation, coming out of their tax bill to support these things. They're gonna see it now as a couple of $100 or something like that directly going to fire and rescue. And my concern is that since they see that might very directly, there might be some concern to say, well, I don't need to donate, I'm already sending $200 in tax money to cover this. Recognizing that the money is going to the county is different from the money going to the volunteer agencies, but I'm just wondering if there will be some reluctance, and it might have some impacts on our donations for the volunteer organizations.
But one thing, and I agree with you on that, but also it may give a lot of the citizens a better idea of the value that they are getting from the volunteer organizations. In what is currently going from our budget to the volunteer organizations, they may see that that is actually a really good value versus having additional career staff. So it does, it works
Yeah.
both ways, but.
As I said, that's the only concern that I've had. I do like the idea of being more transparent, and that's been a focus of this board for the last few years, is to be more transparent in what our business is and what we do.
Absolutely.
Mr. Chairman, a comment that's on the same line generally, I think it's important that we communicate to the citizens that this tax rate, the 11 cents as it now looks in the budget, does not fully fund the fire and rescue services that the county needs and uses, largely because of the volunteer organizations, but also there's an offset of, Glenda, help me, about $1.2 million in revenue, $1.3 million, thank you, in revenue from collections for rescue service through insurance companies and things like that. And so I think it's important that we not give the impression that 11 cents buys everything we need in the way of these services. It does not, and it doesn't even come very close, frankly. And I think so it's important, back to your point, really, that this is
and that may be something that we need to emphasize, that when you start talking about fire companies, that needs a lot of manpower.
Well, there's large investments in property and equipment.
But I'm thinking it's the volunteer manpower that is coming in, that's pretty important, as well as the rescue. But I think the fire are probably a larger proportion of volunteers, and that's important. And so we probably need to find ways of making sure that everybody's aware of that.
Well, and there is a large investment on equipment, because you were on the board when we approved those two, was it 800 or 880 each?
No, 800 plus.
I thought they were 880 each.
Well,
but
it was not cheap,
no, plus interest.
and we're still paying for them.
Yeah.
Which are now over 1.5 million apiece. So,
So that's equipment outlays that unfortunately in the future we will bear here, or the county will bear through its citizens as the volunteers disappear, because there's just not as many replacements.
Well, I would like to make the citizens aware that in fact we are very dependent upon the volunteer organizations, and they deserve the citizens' support. I think that's just an important thing that we can continually emphasize year after year.
Well, they give up their time and take it away from their jobs, their family, whatever they have to do to take care of it, and we all greatly appreciate it. But like I said, as times change and the world becomes more transient, volunteers are harder and harder to find. The young guys aren't coming out because they can't get off their job, they don't work here, things are changing, so. Yeah, it's something that gives us transparency in the budget, and if anybody actually wants to delve into it, they can start looking at the cost of things and find out the, several millions of dollars that each company has in the fire department, that's gonna be a tough load to bear further down the line.
Absolutely. Okay, any further comment? Mr. Johnson? Thank you, sir. All right, we have a motion for this resolution.
Roll call.
Yes, I was gonna say, let's do a roll call on this.
Mr. Goodwin,
Aye.
Mr. White,
Aye.
Mr. Johnson,
Aye.
Mr. Frame,
Aye.
Mr. Crozier,
Aye.
5-0.
All right, passes unanimously. All right, now we need to, go back to an earlier item, setting our tax rate. Ms. Beth? Bradley. That's me.
Just to review, because it's a reassessment year for us, there are different advertising requirements, that are, laid out in the code. And one of them is that if we, foresee a scenario in which we would increase the tax rate, which now includes the fire and EMS levy as well. But if we increase the tax rate above what would be the equalized rate, then we need to advertise a public hearing 30 days in advance. So what we have, and I think everybody should have at their place, is a draft of the ad that we need to send into the newspaper by the end of the week. Ms. Garten and I have been working with the budget subcommittee, and I'll let Mr. White and Mr. Johnson just tell you what they recommend as far as a rate to advertise.
You're younger than I
She
am.
mentioned you first.
Well, I'll start. As I think I mentioned during board comment, this requirement to announce a tax rate at this point in the process is unrealistic from the standpoint of trying to really narrow it down and in fact establish the tax rate. This is not establishing the tax rate. That's an important distinction, because we're only about halfway through the budget, and you can't establish a tax rate until you have a budget. And so, but because it was a reassessment year, the notice requirement comes much earlier in the process than it ordinarily would. So here we are. So I think the recommendation of the Budget Committee is that since we just moments ago established the countywide fire and EMS district, and the current estimates are that that's about an 11-cent rate, that the prudent thing to do at this point is to take our current rate, and I'm just gonna round this for convenience, of roughly 80 cents that included the fire and EMS component, take the 11 cents off of the 80, and then advertise a rate not to exceed 69 cents. The math is simple, 80 minus 11 gets you 69.
9.3 wouldn't be.
Well, I rounded just because of the inaccuracies inherent in the process, and so, we could do, it's actually 80.4, we could do 69.4 if we want.
11.1 coming off.
And so it's 11, I mean, we can round or we can get more specific, and I think that's up for discussion, but in general, the thinking at this point is the best thing we can do is, establish a not-to-exceed rate, believing fairly confidently that we will ultimately end up with something below that. But we can't know that at this point. So, and if we do that, even at that number, you're looking at a little over or right at a 5.75% increase year over year. So it's within sort of the bounds of our policies and the like. But the recommendation, I think, is that we, at the moment, we announce a not-to-exceed rate of 69 cents, along with the 11 cents on the fire and EMS.
Yeah, it's just, I mean, not a lot I can say other than repeat what Jim's already said. But because of the need to get a number out there, because we haven't really finished putting the budget together. You know, we'll just take 11 off of 80 and let it sit at 69. That's the rate. I can't imagine that we're actually gonna set the rate at 69, but that's a not to exceed, and it will very likely be, almost certainly will be less than 69, but we don't know exactly how much less than 69, so.
Some of that dependent upon the state's support of the schools.
Well, part of the problem is that they're still moving targets in a number of areas,
That's right.
including the schools and so forth. And so, you know, it just, things are not, you know, stacked up in a sequence the way they need to be to make real sense and final judgments. We're checking a box here. I don't wanna belittle the importance of it, because we are announcing to the public that something's going on. But in terms of its meaning, we're simply checking a box
An eraser.
with a great big eraser.
Great big eraser on it.
Or written in something that's easily changed, whatever, yeah.
All right, any more discussion or comment on this? All right, can you fill those boxes in then, Glenda? With 69 being not to exceed,
Right,
and,
that will, be 8 cents over the equalized rate.
right. But
Just-
that, yeah,
Excuse me,
go ahead.
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Just to point out for the benefit of the public, once you advertise, you can't pass a rate that's higher than what you've advertised. You can come down, but you can't go up. So it's always wise to advertise a little higher than you think you'll ultimately end up, because if you go too low, you're stuck with it.
And especially based on the fact that, as Mr. White said, we're only maybe halfway through the budget process, so. All right, did we need,
So what are the other numbers in the rest of that thing? You have 69 for not to exceed. The other would be 80.
8 cents.
8
80,
cents, and it's an 11%, increase.
And then the last number, I think, is 5.74%.
Right.
5.74,
Right.
okay.
So, the first blank is 0.69. What's the second blank?
0.08.
0.08,
What is it?
And the third
0.08,
blank
8
is,
cents.
11%.
why do we have,
Written and numeric,
Oh, okay.
sorry.
The word 11, and then
oh. There's two 11%. Okay.
Or 80, okay. So it'd be 69 would be, and the difference would be 0.08, or 80, which is 5 3/4%. Okay.
and just so that anyone that's watching is aware, where we've inserted the numbers would be the effective rate increase, the County of Orange, Virginia proposes to adopt tax rates not to exceed 69 cents per hundred of assessed value for the general real estate tax rate, and 11 cents per hundred of assessed value for a countywide fire and EMS district tax. The difference between the lower tax rate and the combination of proposed taxes would be 8 cents per hundred, or 5.3%.
No,
11.
11%.
11%.
The 5.74 is the last number in number 5.
And then the total budget increase would exceed last year by 5.74. That's if we adopted it at 69.
But that's a budget that we haven't,
Haven't even.
that doesn't
come close.
exist.
That's right. And I point out, it is the consolidated budget,
Right.
not just the general fund or any of those. There are lots of budgets. This is the consolidated one.
Did we need to vote on this?
Call it
Yes,
what?
sir.
I think a motion would probably be good, just giving us permission to advertise.
Okay,
I second.
okay. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Passes unanimously. I would look for one more motion.
We adjourn.
All in favor?
Aye.
We're so adjourned.